We welcome in Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star now. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. Dylan Sin with me from up in Fort Wayne, Journal-Gazette.
How are you, Kyle? Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Let's see. What did I see? 8-man football. Probably strange to most people in Indiana, but when I was in school at IU, one of my roommates, Jim Sams, who played football at Indiana, had come from Iowa. Although Jim was 6'2", 245, he played, I think he came from Union, Iowa. And I'm going to look up while we're talking the population of Union, Iowa. But I think that his school had a total of 100 kids, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So they played, I guess it was an 8-man football, I guess, probably. Is that the only variation is 8-man?
No, I mean, there's the majority of non-11-man is 8-man, but there is, like in the Dakotas, they have 9-man is fairly popular, and then 6-man in parts of really Texas is kind of the main 6-man area, but Nebraska, Kansas, there's a few other states who have 6-man too. I'd have to look at the map of it, but 8-man's kind of the predominant, if you're playing non-11-man, ordinary football, I guess people would say, you're probably playing 8-man football. And, I grew up around the game as well, so it's not unusual to me. I know it's kind of a foreign concept. Like you said, Jim, it's here in Indiana, it's not something we're used to, but and I think there's multiple reasons for that, but I think probably, there is a history of it. If I haven't talked to Bud Wright personally, but the longtime coach at Sheridan, he remembers, from talking to other people about it, he's brought it up, but he remembers 8-man. There was little pockets of Indiana, Evansville area had a league that had 8-man football for a while, like back in the 40s and 50s. There was Northwest Indiana had a little pocket of 8-man football for a while too. Even in Indianapolis, there was 6-man football. A lot of the programs kind of starting football in the early 40s, late 30s, early 40s, they played 6-man for a while, probably only, a handful of years, but, schools like Beech Grove and I'd have Speedway. There's several that actually played 6-man for a little bit of time before transitioning to 11-man. So it is a little bit of a foreign concept, but I think what's going to happen here, you're going to see a handful of programs. They're basically starting it with new programs. And, like Blackhawk Christian's going to start playing 8-man. Waldron. There's a few others who haven't totally committed yet, but probably will. And then I think what you'll see is some of the 11-man programs that are losing numbers or, struggling with numbers will probably go down to 8-man is what I would think. That's kind of conjecture, but I think that's most likely what will happen. And then, you may have some programs fluctuate between the two, not in the same year, but, you may, see a school. I don't know how they'll do that exactly, but maybe you have to say what you're going to do in advance, but, maybe fluctuate and go down, up and down, depending on their numbers. But it's really I think a good opportunity for schools who are considering football that may Greenwood Christian's another one. They're actually in the process of hiring a football coach, and then, they may go, they could go either way at this point. I think they want to play 11-man in the long run, but they may start as an 8-man program because they're teaching kids how to play football for the first time who haven't played it before. So, there's a lot of schools like that. None of them really have facilities at this point. So probably this pilot season is going to be playing on different fields and, meeting each other halfway. It's going to be kind of a pilot season. It's going to be not a real season necessarily, but maybe you play 5 or 6 games at the most and then practice and kind of get ready for, building your program in the future. But, in the Midwest, it's a common game, and in Illinois, we've seen they've had more 8-man programs. Michigan has quite a few. Ohio doesn't have that many, but they have a handful. And then, like you said, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas out there, and those, there's a reason too, because, a lot of these schools here in Indiana are consolidated schools now. There's not so many like really small schools anymore, like there is out in Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, places that have 8-man football that, they almost can't even possibly even have 11 players on, on their team. So, they've gone down to play 6-man and 8-man. That's why they have a lot more smaller schools still. And we don't have that as much here in Indiana anymore. It's very much the schools have been consolidated going back to the 50s and 60s. So, that's part of the reason too. But I think it's a good idea. I think I think the idea basically is to give more kids opportunities to play football and more schools the opportunity to start a football program. So, if you can get enough teams to play, say you get 10, 12 this first year, I think that'd be a good start.
Absolutely, because starting a football program is unlike any other sport. The amount of players, first of all, it has more other than soccer, which is the same, but the equipment that each player has to have that makes that difficult and for some schools, especially the smaller ones. And then you talk about the numbers. I was talking about my former roommate Jim Sams. I looked up Union, Iowa. The population is 380.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he went to school. He went to school with a place that has a population of 380 people, under 400 people. But yet he ended up playing JUCO football, and then from JUCO football he played at Indiana. So, and I think this could be kind of fun, kind of on the scale of arena football.
Mm-hmm.
Faster, a little fast action. Are the rules the exact same?
It's basically, and they don't know yet if there's going to be 80-yard or 100-yard fields. I talked to Bob Gaddis about that, and they haven't solidified all the rules. A lot of states will go 80-yard fields. The field is narrower. I think it's 40 yards. And what they will do on these normal fields is kind of put up temporary sidelines. Whether just like a paint, like kind of like you do for baseball, where you put down a chalk line or whatever. You'll have cones and whatever. It'll look like a kind of a temporary sideline, basically, is what it is. And then you could easily do the 80-yard field the same way if that's what you do on a 100-yard field. You set it up that way. So that is normally, so it's 80-yard field. It's like you said, a lot more scoring. You'll see the scores sometimes get lopsided, but a lot of times it's 50 to 50s and 60s. You're in the into that neighborhood as far as points go. And there are more players eligible to catch passes, but a lot of the from what I've seen covering it way back, it's more of a run based. There are teams who throw it, but it is kind of a wide open running game more, and it's just harder for the defense with less players out there and more offensive players eligible to handle the ball. So it's a unique, if you have a couple skill guys who are fast, man, you're off and running. You don't have to have big, massive offensive lines and things like that, which you're not going to have anyway at that level of football. So, it is a unique game. But it's also at its base, it's just football. There's not a whole lot of strange things, but 6-man is kind of where it gets a little bit even weird, because it just looks weird, 6 guys on each side. But it is football. There's some different things to it, but at its core, it is just football.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead.
I guess my question is, so a lot of these teams you talked about, well, they want to play 11-man eventually, but they might start with 8-man. How much of it are these teams going to be, we're going to start an 8-man program and then try to move up at some point later on once we get people interested in it? Or is it mostly going to be teams are going to play 8 and stick at 8? Do you think?
I think it's a combination. I don't know what that looks like. And even talking to some of the programs that are considering it, they don't know yet, like, are we in for this year, or there's some who just want to wait. They kind of want to wait till next year and see how the first year goes. And then some schools like, I think Waldron, said this is, we want to get in on the ground floor and get started. I got the sense they really want to play 8-man. They want to be an 8-man program, for the duration. Now, the one thing that well, I think could change that, Dylan, would be how many teams in our area are going to play 8-man, and then you're talking about not only the cost of starting a program with equipment and all that, but the travel costs of going to play a full schedule. Are you going to have to go around the state to play games? Are you having to meet somewhere? And that they pretty much know the first year they're going to have to, kind of maybe even play jamboree style some of these games. It's just going to be. That's going to be what it is. But in the future, looking forward, it's like how many schools are playing 8-man. I do think it'll become more popular because I do think there's a handful of schools out there that will want to. Maybe they can't compete at the 1A level and 11-man. They just don't have the numbers. I know I'm not going to say their names, because to out them, but I think there are a couple who are in that boat who would probably consider going to 8-man just for competitive purposes, just who haven't had the numbers, but I don't know that for sure. But I do think that will happen, and then you'll have probably a strong core of teams who want to play 8-man moving forward. It's kind of the weirdness of it right now because people don't know what it is. People around here, it's like a foreign language, really. And I think when they had the IHSAA meeting, they brought in these coaches from other states to kind of explain what it was, and I think that helped. Kind of show them what the game looked like, what the hurdles will be. And I think in the future, that's only going to, the familiarity of the game, I think obviously will help, moving forward. Now, the one thing I do wonder about is like, how are you going to do the cutoff? If a school wants to go down to 8-man, are you going to make them be under a certain amount of enrollment, or how, and I don't think that would happen where schools would just try to, chase trophies and, because I think the majority of those schools are going to want to play 11-man anyway, if you have those numbers. But I would be curious to know if there's going to be a cutoff on how big your school can be to have 8-man football. That would be one of my questions. That's probably a question for later, but I would be curious about that.